Seidler, many of us know him. He's been an active part of the SoDA community since Lisbon, I think, if not before. So 2018, Michael's been an advisor, a partner within the community. He's the founder and CEO of Madison Ventures. He works on M&A and investment planning and strategy for agencies, and then also companies who are buying agencies. And we've had Michael come and do this every year and find it incredibly valuable to get an overview of the market, what the buyers' metrics are looking like, what buyers are valuing, what kinds of transactions are happening. And even if you're not, we say this every year, even if you're not thinking about selling your agency now or ever, it's always a very helpful kind of benchmark to just understand what investors are valuing about our kinds of businesses and at what level. The other piece is, Michael, a couple of years, when did you launch Madison Alley TV? 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, he also launched Madison Alley TV to focus on in-depth kind of conversations with CMO and marketing leads. He also has some agency leads at bigger agencies and holding companies, and he's going to share a few insights from some of those discussions, particularly with CMOs, and some of their takes on trends that have been top of mind for them. So welcome Michael, and look forward to this presentation.
Thank you so much, Tom. I'm really excited to be here, and as it's been, I think, about 5 years or so, just coming back and seeing so many faces every year, and it's just a great place to be. So thanks for having me here. So we have a presentation. Some of you that have seen this before, there's some of these slides that are similar. Some of them are updated, and then there's also some more material, particularly from what we've been developing at Madison TV. But this is, as Tom said, what we focus on, and something to think about is, what is the strategic opportunity for you as digital agency owners, founders, CEOs, and leaders to ultimately realize value and premium value and strategic value for your agency. But as Tom said, just as importantly, regardless of whether that's something that's top of mind for you, this can hopefully be a good benchmark for you to think about how can you really extract and really build a business that's of greatest value, what the market looks like, regardless of what you're looking to do in the near future. So this is just a little bit of overview of us. As Tom said, we're a strategic M&A advisory group. We're specifically focused on the digital marketing, media, and advertising space. I founded the group about 20 years ago in 2003. I was managing the global investment group for Interpublic for 4 years, from 99 to 2003. Have seen the boom and the bust, and so many of us have seen these different cycles come through. We're typically involved in M&A transactions, advising on deals between $25 million to 250 or 500, up to even $500 million in some cases. And we're also have built a blend of team, which we think is really helpful, of former strategic buyers and investors, so that we can see the market from both sides, as well as global agency operators and investment bankers. So that kind of blend is hopefully good insight. And I'd also encourage you, we're always welcome to have any conversations with you at any point, just to try to be as helpful as we can be for you at any stage. One of the things that we developed, as Tom said, about 3 years ago when the pandemic started, we took a look and thought, what can we do differently in this new market? And so that's where we launched Madison TV. So I'll get into that in a little bit. But basically, we've been interviewing global CEOs, CMOs, and distinguished founders across this industry. So this is just a glimpse of, I encourage you all to visit MadisonLA.tv, and I've been hosting interviews for typically 1 hour long in-depth interviews with the global CEOs, the CMOs, and the distinguished founders across the marketing media industry. So that's everyone from Sir Mark Sorrell, Mark Reed, Philippe Bukowski, Mark Penn, who run S4, WPP, IPG, and Stagwell, and others. And then some of the CMOs that you'll see in a video in just a moment. The CMO of McDonald's USA, Bonin Bao, who's a former CMO of Mondelez and CEO of PepsiCo, Raja Rajamanar, who's the global CMO for MasterCard, Lauren Boyman, who's the CMO for KPMG. And so that we have a little video for you. Welcome everyone to the Executive Lounge presented by Madison TV. And today we welcome into the Executive Lounge Norman DeGreve, Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer of CVS Health. Tariq Hassan, he's the Chief Marketing and Customer Experience Officer for McDonald's USA. Raja Rajamanar, the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer of MasterCard. Lauren Wagner-Boyman is the Chief Marketing Officer at KPMG.
Tony Weitzman, CMO of Dunkin' Donuts.
Wesley Tahar, co-founder of Media Lunch, and today we welcome Rob Norman into the Executive Lounge, the former CEO of Group M North America.
You need to make sure that the organizations have the right CMOs, who are assertive, who are competent, who are knowledgeable, who have a voice, who have a spine.
I function from a place of empathy, collaboration, and empowerment, and then more importantly around removing the fear of failure. You cannot get to greatness if you're afraid to fail.
I think the toughest lesson that most people have to learn as they expand their responsibilities is the transition from doing the work to inspiring others to do the work.
But never forget the power in emotion and connectivity, and never forget that most decisions are emotional and then we rationalize them.
So one of the aspects that we have looked at is what we call as multi-sensory marketing. So typically people are blessed with 5 senses, the sense of sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch. But as marketers, majority of the times, we are only focused on, in terms of communicating and engaging with the customers, only through the sense of sight and the sense of sound. Why do we not do the other 3?
For me, marketing is still that. Where do you invest the money for the greatest return for your company? You can think about it in all different ways. We have lots of tools and tactics and things we can do, but that's still at the core of the job.
We don't measure the success of that program on how many Big Mac meals and how many chicken nugget meals we sell. We used to. Today, we measure what is the total impact on the business.
Now, we are at the verge of the 5th paradigm of marketing. And this 5th paradigm of marketing is actually being driven by 3 significant factors. Between the technology tsunami, the data deluge, and the cultural tectonic shifts that are happening, there is going to be a huge disruption of marketing at an unprecedented scale.
One of the big capabilities that we can get from new modern marketing technology is the ability to put buyers on a journey.
The first goal really is to make sure your talent and teams can use AI in a way that frees them up. Take more day-to-day tasks, the more menial parts of the manual labor off their plate. We started reframing AI as the consumer experiences and interfaces we always imagine. I expect a lot of impacts will change in e-commerce around fashion specifically.
I'm confident that this will be yet another boost to those businesses, and whilst there's going to be some disruption in manual processes, it's been true almost always that technology advances create more employment, not less employment, as long as you're smart about what people are doing.
That's where I see the future of customer experience. So imagine sites and apps and notifications and all of this stuff, understanding what's happening in your life, proactively saying, here's what needs to get taken care of. Would you like me to take care of it? Click, it's done.
So all of those videos are 1 hour long videos of all those global CMOs. They're all accessible and complimentary at MadisonLA.tv. And we'd love you to register for upcoming events as well. So we did some industry survey at the beginning of this year. So this is kind of proprietary insight that of course we share with the SoDA community. But just some things that we were asking about in terms of how at the beginning of the year, how ad spend was expected to increase or decrease. For the most part, what we saw at the beginning of the year was that it was expected to stay the same. There was a little bit of a difference where you can see where there might be some decrease among how companies thought their clients would react. But when you looked at kind of the bigger opportunities, most agencies at the beginning of the year thought that it would be pretty much the same. We also asked about acquisitions and what was expected through the year, and for the most part, companies thought that it would be the same or more acquisitive. And then in terms of valuations, for the most part, it was seen to be a bit on the high side at the beginning of the year. We'll get into where we are right now. So this is a map of the, and many of you have seen this before, so you can see on the left side, these are really most of the marketing service holding companies and the real pure play marketing service groups. And then on the right side, you have the technology service groups. And so what's happened is there's a massive convergence of acquisitions that are happening all for digital marketing and technology services. What I would say is centered around customer experience specifically. So we'll see in a moment the stacks and the service stacks that each of these groups are now building. But what you'll see is that the marketing service groups are now acquiring to get more technology services, and the technology service groups are trying to buy more creative and strategy digital agency service. Again, all centered on the customer experience. It also, you can get a sense of the magnitude of the buying activity of the buyers and the players across the global competitive landscape. So these are all these numbers are based on the market cap, market value of the businesses. So what I think is really interesting is if you take the top 7 or 10, in this case 8 top holding companies and you combine them, they combine currently for a market value of about $70 billion. And then if you look at Accenture's valued at over $200 billion. So Accenture alone is close to 3 times the size of all the global holding companies combined. And then of course you can include some of these others like the Deloitte and PwC and IBM, and then the other groups that are coming in from India, which are the Infosys and Wipro, Cognizant, and then kind of global consulting services. So there still continues to be a massive market cap of anywhere from $800 billion to $1 trillion of market cap that are acquiring into the space of digital marketing and technology services. Now there have been differences this year, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, just in terms of kind of the pace at which the buying activity is happening and the discretion that is being used, in terms of what's being bought. But just keep in mind, there's a huge wave of this market cap and valuations that needs to evolve, and it's all based on a global scale with the same pressures that you are, but on a massive scale in terms of AI and everything else. So they all need to be at the front end of the curve. They need to enhance their capabilities. They need the innovative growth engines to continue to grow and evolve the business to be able to create world-class customer experiences. So this is a classification of the types of active buyers across the market. If you look at the top left corner, these are the marketing service companies that, for the most part, are publicly traded. Most of them in the US, but there are some in the UK and elsewhere. And then you see below that the private agencies. So most of these are owned by private equity groups. They've gotten to a scale, some of them organically, but most of them through acquisition. And most of those acquisitions tend to be fueled by private equity groups that are the sponsors of that. As some of you may know, private equity groups typically have a 3 to 5 year investment horizon on which they're investing. So they're typically trying to double or triple their money within that time frame. So while there's organic growth that they may get from the platform agencies that they acquire, they really tend to accelerate that growth and realize that 2 to 3 times return on their investment through acquisition. And so that actually is a very fruitful segment of acquirers, which tend to be smaller than the holding companies, but very acquisitive to buy capabilities and to buy geographies. One example is we're working with a few groups on the buy side, and so they're European-based marketing service groups, and they're looking to acquire companies in the US to build their foothold. They typically try to get a strategic agency platform in the US, and then they'll add on and bolt on more specialized capabilities into that US agency platform. On the top right, you see the consulting and digital transformation consultancies. So that's everyone from the Accenture, Interactive, now it's called Song, to other groups in that segment, even the McKinsey, on the strategy side, other global consultancies. And then again, there are what are maybe called system integrators or digital transformation consultancies, which are coming from India and other places like Tech Mahindra, there's ThoughtWorks, Wipro, Tata, and some others. They're all at different stages in terms of their acquisition activity or development activity. So for example, Infosys had bought Long Duty, which is a full service digital agency a number of years ago. Wipro owns Design It, and then Tata really hasn't made a lot of traction. So as they start to enter the market, they all really need a lot more US in particular, but they need more digital marketing creative agency services, and they're at different stages in terms of what gets connected to. So just generally, as your approach or have any opportunities, naturally what you'll be thinking about is to what extent do you align with the capabilities and assets that they have and the leadership and the cultural compatibility. And so if there's a wide disparity between what their culture is like and what you would fit into, how well that kind of glue is present, then that's one of, I'm sure, your serious considerations in terms of the cultural integration with, what's trying to acquire. On the bottom, we have the private equity groups. So as the private equity groups tend to, as an initial platform, acquire with agencies that have at least $5 million of EBITDA. And so the most active market is really, kind of $5 to $25 million of EBITDA, or profit before tax, or some profit metric. But like we said, there are many private equity groups that have agency platforms, as you can see, the private agency bucket. And so for that, they are amenable and looking for acquisitions, and in some cases they'll acquire less than that, which could be anywhere from maybe $2 to $5 million or $2 to $10 million of EBITDA to grow the business. So this is just one kind of a general concept of the service stack that's being built across both the global consultancies and the marketing service groups. But generally, they need capabilities so that they can build content platforms, they can build commerce platforms. To some extent, those that are more technology-oriented will go all the way back to the ERP and supply chain. And obviously, database stuff as well through Snowflake and other, database integration and development. And then, above that, there's the actual content, event production or experiential work that some of you do, and then design and commerce. So, kind of end-to-end everything from content to commerce. So that's what they need to build technically in terms of development, and then also, the full customer experience all the way from the initial content all the way through the commerce and growing revenue and growth of their clients. And then you have media buying capabilities and all the data analytics and insights that feeds into that, with creative and strategy on the top. And this is all to feed the CMO. So if you look at maybe Accenture has most of this kind of built out, whereas you have most of the marketing service holding companies that are much farther on the creative marketing side, trying to find more technical capabilities, and then those that are on the more technical side that are trying to buy more creative capabilities. So this is a new slide that might be helpful. If you think about what are the value drivers and how can you build the value of your business? And you might think about it in terms of four main categories. So one is organizationally. What is your quality of the leadership? To what extent do you have a second level of team and any succession plan in place if you're considering that? What are your controls, your financial controls in place, and what does that look like? How scalable is the business, and how well it can grow? And as when most acquisitions are made, one of the questions is not only the scale of the business, but what's the scalability of the business? So one, can you absorb large enterprise clients, and not just one, but many of them? Can you scale the business? So sometimes they'll talk about there's a fire hose of client referrals that can come through. Can you absorb that? Can you digest that? Can you grow and scale that? To what extent is there growth? Are you set up for growth in terms of leadership, scale, and processes, technology, and all that? In terms of capabilities, so this is really kind of the strategic distinction, and this can come in a number of different ways. It could be award-winning strategy and creative, or other distinct capabilities. What we're seeing a lot of is interest in influencer marketing, so there have been some acquisitions there. And then also what your clients look like. What does your client portfolio look like? What's the tenure of your clients? What's the client concentration do you have? Do you have any clients that are over 20 or 25% of your revenue? And how have your clients grown over a number of years? So ultimately, what's your business is a function of what's the quality of your client portfolio and how has it grown, and how stable and recurring revenue you have there. And then finally, the financial metrics, which are have you grown 15 to 20%? This has been a much more challenging year than most. So these metrics are more lenient. So the question may be more about maybe 10% growth, even 5 to 10% growth is sufficient, or the thresholds in this market. What are your margins? Still hoping to see at least 15% EBITDA margins, if not closer to 20, and above that is great. And then obviously, what does your business pipeline look like? And again, I'll reiterate, everybody knows it's been a challenging market. So, some of these thresholds, a lot more leniency and focus on quality companies, versus other years. This will give you just a sense of, on a relative scale, what are tier 1 capabilities. So, AI is at the front of everyone's market, at the front of everyone's mind. For the most part, AI still hasn't scaled. There's very few agencies, if any, that have a lot of AI embedded into everything into what they're doing. So it's still a bit early on that. But other things like influencer marketing, software development consultancies, data analytics are some of the areas that we're seeing a lot of. And also a lot of offshore development in a more challenging economic market. We're seeing a lot of companies that are doing well and growing because they're able to deliver content with lower cost or offshore resources, or distributed resources. Scale matters to some extent, and geography matters to some extent, though less so now, in a more distributed world. I'll go through this quickly, but this is, and everyone, this slide will be accessible, but we think about what are the conditions and elements for which you can realize strategic premium value. So to any extent that you're talking about to any parties, just ask yourself, to what extent are you do they have a strategic priority to acquire your company, or to acquire in a particular market, or to acquire a particular capability? Do they have a lot of cash or not? Do they have an ambitious target? We had one client, Heat, that we had sold to Deloitte, and Deloitte at the time had a plan to build a $500 million global consultancy. So they had a lot of cash at stake to build, to put into that platform, and so they were a lot more lenient on valuation and willing to spend a lot because they were building a $500 million platform. There's other things that are somewhat obvious, but to the extent that the most important thing probably here to come out of this is regardless of all this context, is just build the best business that you can. Focus on doing that, and all these opportunities will be present. If you're growing well, if you have good solid clients, if you have good margins, and you're building your business for scale, then these opportunities, you'll put yourself in the best leverage and the best position to ultimately have the most strategic options and realize the most value for the business. These are some multiples that often people like to see. For the most part, I think they're pretty constant, but I would say, maybe this year, within the kind of $5 to $10 million EBITDA range, or maybe $2.5 to $10 million, there's maybe been a dip of maybe about 15% or so. So whereas we've seen in the last couple of years deals that were kind of 8 to 10x or so, now we're seeing maybe a little bit smaller, maybe 7 to 9x EBITDA for a private equity acquisition. We're working on one deal right now. It's about $7.5 million of EBITDA. So it's actually trading maybe on the higher end of a little over 9x, close to 9 to 9.5x times EBITDA. So that's a private equity transaction. Those deals are structured so it's like 60 to 80% cash, and then the remaining in stock. That's really the simplest deal. It could be the stock in the existing company or of that portfolio company that's acquiring you. And then you would see, the agency holding costs, they'll pay less up front, and then there'll be an earnout of, let's say, 4 or 5 years. There's a segment in the middle, which we talked about, which is when a portfolio company of a private equity group is looking to make an acquisition. Those are shorter earnouts, so that'll be a 2 to 3 year earnout. And again, because the private equity group investor needs to kind of get in, make the investment, and get out within 3 to 5 years. So that is maybe the best opportunities for most of the companies in this space, which are portfolio companies owned by private equity groups. And in those cases, they'll tend to be maybe a 2 to 3 year earnout, or they'll buy you for 60 to 80% cash, with the rest being in stock. Just a quick run through of some of the transactions that have happened over the last couple of years. They span across, the creative agencies. Some of you have seen the Plus company bought Mechanism, which you may know. Dentsu bought Tag, which is a large content production company. We advise SeidlerOne, so that's a large custom software development consultancy that was merged with MediaMonks. There's a large acquisition by WillowTree. WPP has made 3 acquisitions in the influencer marketing space, Village, obviously, and GOAT. One of them, Village, which is more performance-driven influencer marketing. And then some others across the digital performance marketing space. So some of the large ones, Depth, you may have seen, bought 3Q Digital. ZMC bought W Promote, which is a performance marketing agency. Brand Tech Group bought Jellyfish. And then there's some others. Paradigital is another large, performance marketing agency that acquired. There's still been plenty of activity, and then all these companies that have been acquired and are owned by private equity groups in particular are looking to make acquisitions, for new capabilities, to build out their presence in different markets. What we're seeing is the U.S. market in particular is where there's the hottest, the most demand for making acquisitions right now. But everyone's looking to grow, and acquisitions into new fronts is really the fastest way to do that. And then some more in the commerce and data analytics. So that's it. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, Michael. And for those of you, this